Welcome, welcome. I'm Dr. Tracy Dickens, a licensed psychologist. And if you've been here before, welcome back. I'm so glad we get to spend time together again. And if this is your first time here, I'm so glad you found my channel. So this week is part 2 in a series on trauma. And I am just reading excerpts from a book I wrote about how to heal from trauma using science and faith. And so I'm just gonna jump right in and get to reading. So really quick, go grab your beverage, pull up a chair, and let's get started. I pulled into the practice field where my goddaughter was trying out for our softball team. I stepped out of my car, shielded my eyes from the bright sun, and shivered as the wind brushed across me. It was a typical Oklahoma day. I spotted my goddaughter on the field. She was one of many 9-year-old girls stretching and jumping and running. I grabbed my folding chair from the trunk and joined the other parents, settled in to my seat next to my friend, my goddaughter's mom. The girls paired off, creating 2 lines so they could practice throwing the softball back and forth, the distance between increasing after each throw. It was a smooth, simple, basic exercise. And then the ball hit my goddaughter on top of the head. I held my breath. Now, if you have children or you've watched children, you know that when they get injured, their eyes quickly locate the nearest caregiver. That person becomes the barometer of pain. If you freak out, they freak out. If you're chill, they're chill. Getting hit is part of playing softball. So you cannot freak out. And I didn't. Her mom didn't. And amazingly, my goddaughter didn't even look over at us. She walked over to one of the coaches, words were exchanged, heads nodded, and my goddaughter was pointed back to her partner. She nodded, pivoted, and on her 3rd step, I saw it. Her spaghetti thin legs softened and collapsed like well-cooked spaghetti noodles. She face planted. We ran. Her mom made it to her first, shouting her name. No response. She tapped her shoulder. No response. She shouted her name again, and there was small movement and a soft sound. Relief. The crowd grew around us, concern heavy in the air. Are you hurting? She nodded and slowly opened her eyes. After several blinks, it was obvious something was wrong. Her eyes were dazed and unfocused. I can't see. I can't see! Tears spilled from her eyes, big tears, a full flood. Her mom scooped her up and brought her over to the bleachers. Princess, follow my fingers. I can't see. The other parents watched in horror and uncertainty. I'm calling the ambulance. I'm already on it. This is awful. My friend scooped up her daughter and ran to the car. I followed. The hospital was only 2 blocks away. How quickly a normal day can become anything but normal. Just like that. A blink, a traumatic event, your body taken over and moving into action, fleeing, fighting, or freezing, time rushing and standing still in an incomprehensible space of a traumatic event. Merriam-Webster defines trauma as an injury to a living tissue by an intrinsic agent, or a disordered psyche or behavioral state resulting from severe mental, emotional, or physical injury or emotional upset. Trauma wounds physically, trauma wounds emotionally. It does not discriminate based on age, ethnicity, gender, culture, political party, or socioeconomic status. It is inconvenient and its impact is often misunderstood and underestimated. And on that day, as we rushed to the hospital, I understood trauma very well. I knew the research about head injuries, and I prayed. And as we waited for the test results, I recalled the story of David and Goliath in 1 Samuel 17. This famous story involved a very lethal hit on the head. That story started with a normal, unremarkable day too. David woke up and went to work tending to the family sheep. He had no idea his life was about to change. He was asked to deliver bread and cheese, or how I like to think of it, grilled cheese sandwiches, to his brothers, who were soldiers fighting along Israel's first king. David had no idea he would return home as a mighty warrior who killed the enemy's largest, scariest, and most intimidating soldier, Goliath. And Goliath, with all his trash talking, clearly thought he was invincible. But as I said it earlier, trauma does not discriminate. Your war victories mean nothing. One hit, one stone can change everything. And on that day, that one stone hit Goliath, causing loss of balance, and then Goliath fell to the ground. Goliath's hit on the head resulted in his death. Luckily, my goddaughter's hit on the head only resulted in a concussion. Now, I know her story could have ended in death. I mean, I don't mean a physical death. I mean, after all, it was a 9-year-old throwing the softball, not a pro softball player. But that hit could have killed her love for softball. It didn't. Even to this day, she still continues to play softball. So what we have here is a traumatic event. And most of us will think a traumatic event will lead to a trauma disorder. I mean, that's what we're told, right? Well, that's not the truth for everyone. You can have the same event, but different outcomes. One stone, two tails. Because a traumatic event is just that. It's an event, it's an exposure. Nothing more, nothing less. To develop post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, at the base level, you need to have two elements: feeling overwhelmed and feeling helpless. Later in this chapter and in later chapters, you'll see this is a simplified answer. But for right now, I want to be clear that it's not the event that causes PTSD, it's a person's sense of empowerment. So now let's return to David and Goliath's story in 1 Samuel 17, so you can see what I mean in action. When David showed up on the scene, the entire Israelite army was paralyzed with fear. Goliath, standing over 9 feet tall, had been trash talking them for 40 days. Goliath said he wanted to fight one man and would only fight one man. David looked at what everyone else saw and said, "What will be done for the man who kills the Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine who will defy the armies of the living God?" That's how they used to, trash talk back in the day. David didn't focus on Goliath's size or his words. David focused on his past victories. Prior to meeting Goliath, David had proven himself a skilled marksman with his slingshot, as he served as a shepherd. People often view shepherds as meek and mild and walking along a herd of sheep. No worries, no concerns, and that may be true for some. But if the person was a good shepherd, he was prepared to lay down his life to protect his family's income. David told King Saul that he fought and killed a bear and a lion who attempted to take away his sheep in 1 Samuel 17, 34 through 36. David had fought bigger and stronger than Goliath and won. And David recognized his skills played a role in that victory. But God's power played a larger role. David's faith was undeniable. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. David had experienced God in action. He didn't feel helpless. He didn't feel overwhelmed. Obviously, David had the benefit of time. He arrived on the scene, talked to some people, and was able to reflect. Often, a trauma is an event. There's no time to reason and determine the best option. There's only reaction. There's only a survival instinct. Nonetheless, the David effect, as I like to call it, remains unshaken. David's understanding of who he was and God's ability was with him when he fought the lion and the bear. Both were sudden events. Your awareness of your strengths and weaknesses, or your humanity, your understanding of whose you are, a child of God, and your acceptance of what is not under your control, God's sovereignty, are the gatekeepers of your mind. If any of these gatekeepers are misinformed or corrupted, they leave an opening for trauma to evolve into PTSD. However, if all the gatekeepers are well-informed and compassionate, trauma doesn't stand a chance. Sure, it can shout and scream at the gate. It can be disruptive, but it won't take over your life. It will be a trash-talking Goliath that falls when hit by a stone, propelled by faith and the force of the living God. So I ask you, friend, what are your past victories, and how have you experienced God in your life? Well, thank you so much for listening to this excerpt. I hope it was helpful for you. I look forward to sharing more in the next few videos. So until then, choose joy.